Hi guys, in this video we're going to have a look at how to solve functions. So it's the last bit we're going to do on functions, so make sure you have a look at all the other parts before this one because I'll be using some of those methods. Okay, let's get started. So this first one here, here's our function 3x plus 7 and we're asked to solve the function when it equals 13. So nice easy start. F of x, it just equals 3x plus 7. So all I'm going to do is go 3x plus 7, which is the function, and set it equal to 13. Now I'm going to use the balance method to solve this because functions is probably going to be a higher topic, in which case I want to get x on its own. So I'm going to start taking stuff off this side. I'm going to start with this 7, so I'm going to take away 7 to both sides, which is going to leave me with 3x equals 6, and then divide both sides by 3, like so, and therefore x equals 2. So a nice easy start. Obviously that's the most basic. What we could have is something like this, where again we need to work out what f(g) of x is going to be and then set it equal to 86. So again, if you haven't seen the previous parts to the functions videos, make sure you look back because this is how you do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put g, which is x minus 5, into f. So I'm going to put brackets around the x here because I'm going to put this into there. I'm going to substitute it in. So in which case, I'm going to have my 6, which is here. Then I've got my bracket, which is around the x. And remember, I'm going to put this, the g, into here. So that's going to be x minus 5, and I've got my plus 2, and of course this will equal 86. So once you've got that, expand the brackets. Well, 6 times x is 6x, 6 times minus 5 is minus 30, still got my plus 2, and it's still equal to 86. A little bit of simplifying. Minus 30 plus 2 is going to be minus 28, and that's going to equal 86. And then just like we did up here, just going to use the balance method to solve it. So I'm going to get rid of this minus 28 by doing the opposite and adding 28. So I'll have 6x equals 114. And then I'm going to divide by 6 both sides, in which case x equals 19. Okay, so it's just combining the composite skill here and then solving together. Exactly the same thing up this one here. This time I'm putting f into itself. So I'm going to put 6x plus 2 into the bracket. So I'll start it up here. So here's the first 6. Then I've got my bracket where I'm going to put 6x plus 2 into it again. And then I have my plus 2, and this one is equal to 14. So exactly the same steps. I'm going to expand the bracket. 6 times 6x is 36x. 6 times 2 is 12. Then I've got my plus 2, and it's still equal to 14. A little bit of simplifying here again. So I have 36x, 12 plus 2 is 14, and it equals 14. Same as before, use the balance method to solve it. I'm going to minus 14 to both sides, which is going to leave me with 36x equals 0. And I'm going to divide by 36. You might even already see the answer coming out already. X is going to equal 0 in this particular case. Okay, so let's have a look at this one then. So exactly the same thing up here, but it's ever so slightly different because I've got an x squared. So the function of g of x is 2x squared minus 10. This time the function equals 8. So I'm just going to set this equal to 8. So let's do that. So it's exactly the same idea as this one, except this is my function, so I'm going to set that equal to 8. Exactly the same thing, use the balance method and start to solve it. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides, which is going to give me 2x squared equals 18. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 2, which gives me x squared equals 9. and then I'm going to square root x squared equals 9, and then I'm going to square root both sides. So x will be 3, but don't forget whenever you square root something there's also the negative answer, so x could also be minus 3. So 3 squared is 9, and minus 3 times minus 3 is also 9, so there's 2 options there, just a little one there to watch out for. Don't lose that last mark. Okay, so there's a few examples there. Let's take it up a notch. Okay. So in this particular case, again we're solving, but this time I'm going to put x minus 2 into my function. So I put the brackets around the x like so, because that's what I'm going to put my x minus 2 into. Okay, so let's do that then. So first of all I've got my bracket, then I need to substitute this into the brackets, which is x minus 2, and then it was squared plus 1. So I've now put this into the function, and then that was equal to 0. Okay. Next up is to expand this bracket, so I'm quickly going to draw a grid. X minus 2, x minus 2, x times x is x squared, minus 2x, minus 2x, minus times a minus is a positive, so plus 4. That's going to give me minus 4x. If you can't remember how to expand double brackets, just check out the video. In which case, when I expand this, I'm going to have x squared, which is from there, minus 4x plus 4. Then I've got my plus 1, and of course it's still equal to 0. Bit of tidying up. X squared minus 4x, 4 plus 1 equals 5, so plus 5 equals 0. Okay. Now you might notice this is a quadratic and it's equal to 0 already, so I can now use the quadratic formula, or I can factorise. If it's a calculator paper, you'll probably have to use a quadratic formula. However, if it's non-calculator, you will have to factorise. And I've deliberately chosen this example to be a non-calculator example, so I'm now going to factorise it to try and solve it. So I'm going to put my x squared in there. And again, if you can't remember how to factorise in double brackets, check out the video. And I've got my plus 5, which means I can put my x and my x to get my x squared. Numbers that multiply to get 5, I've only got one option, 1 times 5, so that is the one that I'm going to choose for obvious reasons. In which case I'll have 5 there, and then 5 times x is 5x. And I've got my 1 here, so x times 1 gives me x. If I simplify that at the minute, I have 6x. I need to have minus 4x. So to get that, I'm going to put a minus there, because minus 5x plus 1x gives me my minus 4x, which is what I'm after. In which case, if I put that as a minus 5, I just need to add it up there. So minus 5 times x is my minus 5x. In which case, when I factorise that, I'm going to have x minus 5, which is that bracket, and x plus 1, which is this bracket, and again it's equal to 0. In which case I can now solve this by figuring out what does x need to be to make this bracket 0. If you're unsure about what I'm about to do, check out the video of factorising to solve quadratics. But what does x need to be to make this bracket 0? It would need to be 5, because 5 take away 5 is 0, and then 0 times whatever's in here gives me 0. And what does x need to be to make this bracket 0? It needs to be minus 1, because minus 1 plus 1 is 0. So my solutions here, x equals 5 and x equals minus 1. Okay, let's have a look at this one then. So this one's getting really intense. We've got to work out what g f of x is and f of g of x is, and then we need to set them equal to each other and then solve them. So first of all, I'm going to work out what g f of x is, and that involves me putting f into g. So let's do that. Well, g is x squared, so I'm going to put a bracket round here and put that in there. So that's going to be 3x plus 1 squared. So let's work this out. If I just draw a very quick grid to expand this bracket, 3x plus 1, 3x plus 1, 3x times 3x is 9x squared, 3x times 1 is 3x, 3x times 1 is 3x, and 1 times 1 is 1, simplify this, it's going to give me 6x. So this here, or g f of x, is equal to 9x squared plus 6x plus 1. Now if I work out what f of gx is, let's do that down here. This time I'm putting g into f, so again I'm going to put a little bracket around there. I'm going to put x squared into there, so that's going to be 3, which is there. Then I've got my x squared, which I've substituted in, and then plus 1. That's quite nice, that is just 3x squared plus 1. So now I've worked out that one, and I've worked out that one, I can now set them equal to each other. So that's what I'm going to do down here. So I've got my 9x squared plus 6x plus 1, which was my gf of x, and that's equal to fgx, which is this one here, 3x squared plus 1. And again, to solve this, I need to make it equal to 0. This is the smaller x squared, so I'm going to get rid of this one. So minus 3x squared to both sides. That's going to give me 6x squared plus 6x plus 1 equals 1. And then I still want to make it equal to 0, because I can't solve anything until it's equal to 0. So I'm going to get rid of that one. So I'll take it away from both sides, which leaves me with 6x squared plus 6x equals 0. Now again, I want to solve this. You might be thinking it looks very similar to a factorising into double brackets like here, except this one here you can actually factorise it into single brackets, because 6 is a common factor and so is x. So if I just very quickly draw my little grid, again this is factorising into single brackets. So the highest common factor in this case is 6. So I break this up, 6 times x plus 6 times x. And what's the same? 6 is, x is, what's left? X, and then plus. Remember from the video, from factorising into single brackets, if everything gets cancelled, we just stick it as a 1. So when you factorise this, you'll have 6x x plus 1 equals 0. So again, what does x need to be to make this 0? Well, 6 times 0 will make it 0. What does x need to be to make this bracket 0? X needs to be minus 1. So that's how you can solve that one. And I've got one last example to show you, which is this beast here, where we are inversing and then solving. So I've got the inverse of f and I've got the inverse of g. So again, if you can't remember how to inverse, make sure you check out the previous video, because that's what I'm now about to do. So if you remember, when I need to inverse this function here, I'm going to set it equal to y. And the next step is to swap the x and y, because I'm going to inverse it, so the input becomes the output and the output becomes the input. So I'm going to swap them over. So it's x equals y squared minus 17. And then we need to rearrange it to make y the subject. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 17 to this side, and then obviously do the same thing to this side. So x plus 17 equals y squared. Then I'm going to square root it, and therefore square root this side as well. So I'm going to end up with the square root of x plus 17 equals y. Okay, and don't forget to put it back in. So the inverse function of f equals the square root of x plus 17. Okay, so that's that one done. Now let's do the inverse of this one. So remember, set it equal to y, swap the x and the y round, and then rearrange it to make y the subject. So I'm going to minus 3 from both sides. So x minus 3 equals y, and you're done. So inverse of g is just x minus 3. Okay, once you've done that, you can then put them back into here, and we're going to set them equal to each other. So we've got root x plus 17 equals x minus 3. So just set these two equal to each other like I've done over here. Then it's just a simple rearranging. So I'm going to get rid of this square root by squaring both sides. So x plus 17 equals this side squared. I'm going to expand that bracket. So I'm going to draw myself a very quick grid. X minus 3, x minus 3, x times x, x squared, x times minus 3x, same thing here. Minus times a minus is a positive, so I'll have 9. And that's going to give me minus 6x when you simplify it. Again, have a look at expanding double brackets if you're unsure about that. Put that back in. I'm going to have x plus 17 equals my x squared minus 6x plus 9. And again, to solve this, I need to make it equal to 0. So my x squared is already on this side, so I'm going to get rid of everything on the left-hand side here to make it a bit easier. So I'm going to minus x, and I'm going to be minus x, which is going to leave me with 17 on this side, equals x squared minus 6. Take away another x is minus 7x plus my 9. Then I want to get rid of the 17 from both sides. So I'm left with 0, which is what I was after. X squared minus 7x, and then 9, take away 17 is minus 8. Okie dokie, once we've got this, it's now equal to 0. I can now factorise it. Again, if it was a calculator, you would use the quadratic formula. If it's non-calculator, you can factorise it. So again, pick this example so I can factorise it. And therefore, I'm going to draw my grid. And I'm going to put my x squared in and my minus 8, as I always do. X times x gets you the x squared. What numbers multiply to get 8? Well, I've got 1 times 8, 2 times 4, and that's it. Which one of these can I use to get a 7? Well, I can use 1 and 8, take them away to get a 7. So that's the one I'm going to pick, which will give me 8x and just x on its own. At the minute, if I simplify them, I'm going to get 9x, but I want minus 7x. So if I do minus 8x plus 1x, I'll have my minus 7. So I just need to tweak that to be minus 8. So 0 will equal x minus 8, and then this bracket here, x plus 1. And just like before, what does x need to be to make this bracket 0? X needs to be 8, because 8 take away 8 is 0, so that works. And x needs to be minus 1, because minus 1 plus 1 is 0. And there's your two solutions. So that's quite a few examples there on how to solve functions. Hopefully that helps, guys. Thanks for watching.